Good evening, everybody. Welcome in and happy Friday. I don't know about you, but I am very glad that it is Friday. Actually, I'm going to turn my mic down because the gain is a little ridiculous. There we go. Well, yeah, sorry. I am experimenting with some new music, so the volume may be a little bit jacked. So, just bear with me. Good evening, Sigma and Sniper. Thank you. Welcome in. Also, I apologize if the music is a little incongruous. If you can hear it, I'm still playing with levels. So, for those who don't know, I am experimenting with the Heartbound soundtrack from the Heartbound game by Pyro Software. I have been informed by the developer that we can use it for streaming. Oh gosh, ads. That's annoying. I was trying to get it to play through Spotify, but it doesn't appear to want to work. So, if you guys can bear with me just a minute or two, I'm going to see if I can load it into. Let's see. Yeah. I was trying to avoid playing it from YouTube because ads are a thing. So, we're gonna be playing with. Let's see. Let's see. So, please excuse me just a minute while I play with this. Oh, you were not doing what I think you are. No. Oh my goodness. I don't know if this is gonna work, but it might. We will see. Oh, trust me, it's in writing. It's in writing. I'm just trying to get it to work on one of my music programs, and it's not wanting to behave. So I was trying to avoid playing it off of YouTube because ads. Let's see. Okay, give me just a second while I play with this. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Sorry, some technical issues here. Sorry. Let's see. Sorry. I was trying to get this set up before I started going live, but that didn't happen. So, okay. Yeah. Alright. Let's see if I can get this to work properly. Bear with me. Okay. Oh, that is incredibly loud. I apologize. Alright. Please let me know if the volume is too loud. I am still playing with it. It's really loud in my ears. So I'm actually going to turn it down just a little. But please do let me know if the music is too loud. I am experimenting with it. I'm not using Spotify because it won't work. So. Alright. So I would appreciate if somebody could tell me if the music is too loud. Okay. Trying to not blast my own eardrums in the process. Alrighty. Okay. Okay. But yes, I have seen that in writing in various different places. Hello, Mr. XI, welcome in, Mr. First Time Chatter. Alright. So, now that I have my music mostly sorted, let's go ahead and get started. Yay, Tubba! Yes, I'm streaming on a Friday. It's very unusual. No worries. Oh yeah, I'm still messing with the volume because I'm trying not to blast my own eardrums in the process. Alright. Also, welcome to Frosty Tools. I'm still sorting that out. So please bear with if it's a little janky. I decided that I liked Frosty Tools' cool little... No, it worked. It worked. It worked. Sniper, it worked. It was there. It did work. Okay. That works. But yes, no, it does work. It's just a different format than most people are used to. Alright. I am going to start. There we go. For those who don't know, I am also attempting to use closed captioning, mainly because I am reading books. So I wanted to try the closed captioning to make it a little bit more accessible for anybody who is hard of hearing to be able to understand what I'm reading. So I am going to get sorted here. All right. So we are actually going to be finishing out To All Things an End this evening. That's the first story in the second series, which the second series is called The Sith Duology. So we're going to be finishing that out this evening with our last two chapters. For those who have not been here, there's been a lot going on. So buckle up, grab a drink, grab a snack if you want that. Also, feel free to check my commands list down below in my About panels. Please feel free to use them. I do try to pay attention to those. And I have nothing crazy. So, I'm going to... Hold on a second. There we go. Alright. Yeah, like I said, this is a game soundtrack, so the songs may be a little off the wall. Yeah, yes, Tuppa, I agree. Yes, totally agreed. And I do apologize if the music is a little bit low. I am attempting to not blow my eardrums because I have headphones on. Mainly so that I don't hear anything else because it's distracting. So, let me get some water. Oh. And, okay. Alright. Please let me know if the music is too low or too loud. We're going to test this out. Audio levels are a bit funky for me because that's all I'm hearing is the music. So I apologize. Okay. Alrighty. Yep. Sorry. Still arranging windows. Okay. Well, thank you for the lurk. I appreciate you. All right. To All Things an End, Chapter 20. I'm going to turn that down just a little. Yeah, okay. Oh, there we go, okay. I figured out how to turn it down for myself, so I'm not going deaf. Yay! Small wins. Alright. As long as you guys can still hear it and me, we're good. Alright. To All Things an End, Chapter 20. Renvar. Callista and Dylan stared at each other for a long moment before she glanced at Zan. We have to finish up here. Her hands curled into fists as she took a breath and then let it out. After regaining his own breath, Zan nodded. Where did Turlon take off to, and where did those rat cans go? He shook his head and tried to regain some sense of equilibrium. Callista glanced around before reaching out with the force. Turlon's about 50 meters to our left. She squinted, bringing up the zoom function on her HUD. It looks like he's assisting another knight. As to the Imperials, she frowned slightly. They're 20 meters east of us, and the distance is opening fast. She swore profusely in Mandoa. Hutune! Turlon, take your friend and head to the ships. The Sith will try to destroy them. I need them protected. Zan blinked. Dylan, are you able to concentrate, Vald? He asked. Yeah. Dylan's voice shook slightly, but he looked squarely at Zan and Callista. What do you need? Callista heard Turlon's double click of acknowledgement as Dylan spoke before the frequency cleared. Watching for a moment via her HUD, she saw the group moving slowly towards the shuttles on the other side of the low hill the Jedi forces had used as cover. Zan smiled, but knew his helmet hid it. I need a card blade beside us. We're heading for the main group. He looked over at Callista. Let's see if the son is as good as the father. She grinned at him when she saw Dylan's cheeks flush. The teen straightened and swiped damp hair from his face. You can count on me, Master. At that, Callista smiled, though with a touch of sadness. She remembered the day she spent with the cards as a Padawan, watching Dylan train or training alongside him. Shaking herself, she nodded and began moving into the blowing snow towards the black smear that was the bulk of the Sith forces. Knock off that Master Ossic, Dylan. We're elite. And you know I don't like it. He grinned. Just one more thing. Where did that other Padawan get to? He looked around and spotted her before he whistled. Front and center. Here, Master Canadius. Sharon spoke up from a few meters behind them where she'd been guarding their rear. How can I help? Her yellow blade hissed softly as the snow hit its glowing surface. Zan nodded once. Dylan, Callista, and I will take on the main group west of us. That means that I'm leaving you to disable the remaining defenses and then double back to Turlon at the ships. He paused. You have no master yet, do you, Padawan? Sharon nodded firmly. I can do that. And then she shook her head. No, sir, I don't, she replied, taking her cue from his earlier comment. Zan grinned and was glad she couldn't see it. Good. Do well enough and that will change, Sharon. Minimum casualties. If you run into the Sith, send them to Daryim. And then I'll give the Council a heads up on your new status. Sharon flushed with excitement but quickly got herself under control. Yes, sir. She saluted with her saber and gestured to half the squad of New Republic troops and Jedi gathered around her. They broke off and followed her into the blowing snow. Zan ignited his own saber. He gripped it firmly in his right hand and drew one of his rippers with his left. Right. Are you two ready? Alec, Callista answered, taking a deep breath as she drew her second saber. Dylan's blade hissed into existence, and he nodded, taking up a position that placed Callista between himself and Zan. Somehow, he felt Zan would want him there, though he couldn't quite pinpoint why. As the trio rushed into the fray, their blades moved almost in concert. It was as if the Force was linking them together. Callista didn't stop to ponder that as she leaped, driving her booted feet into the chest of one Sith before she impaled him. She preferred not to kill, but here it was kill or be killed. Beside her, Dylan's blade moved so fast it was almost a blur as he deflected several slashes. Zan's own saber slashed and parried the blade of a young Twi'lek Sith. Zan's power and build worked to his advantage. Eventually, he knocked the He knocked the Sith's blade free from his hands, and at point-blank range, Zan raised his ripper and fired a double tap between the Twi'lek's liku. The body fell to the ground. Don't you hate losing your head in a fight, Dylan? Zan quipped as he took on his next opponent. Dylan grinned. As long as this isn't... Wow, I can't words today. Sorry. Yes. I've also been at work all day, so please excuse me while I take a break and take a drink. I'm trying to read slower. All right, let's try that again. Trying to slow down, I promise. Dylan grinned. As long as it isn't mine, sir. He drove his blade backward, neatly impaling a Sith that tried to come up behind them. Callista, too, stayed close to Zan, feeling the Force swirl around her and fill her as it had during her training with Stefan. She felt it crest over her like a wave. A moment later, she leaped upwards, avoiding the slash that could have taken her leg off. Landing, she spun and stabbed out with one saber, catching the Zabrak Sith in the throat. He went limp, blood fountaining from the wound as he choked and lay still. Calica, you just took my breath away, Zan said before plunging his blade into the chest of a tall human. As the body began to fall, he pulled his blade clear and spun around, bringing his ripper to bear on two Sith who were trying to sneak in from behind. 2 shots later, their bodies joined those of their brethren. You lot aren't just ugly, but you're stupid. Callista shook her head, spinning out of the way as yet another Sith tried to impale her through the back. Hotunla, the lot of them, can't even face us like warriors, she complained. They've never faced a Mandalorian Jedi before. I don't think they've faced a fresher station before, Zan complained as he cut through yet another Zabrak Sith. He reversed his blade and thrust backward into the face of a shorter Sith. Oh, dental surgery, the Canadius method. Anesthesia is a bitch. Dylan, I found your opening. Grab those charges from my pack. He nodded towards a nondescript building that the Sith were pouring out from. We'll keep the path clear. You got it. Dylan looked at Zan's pack, and 3 charges floated into his palm an instant later. Got them. 1 collapsed building coming up. With that, he ducked away from them, keeping low to the ground as he ran. As Dylan moved away, Callista closed ranks with Zan, keeping to his side. They fought better as a pair anyway. Man, they just don't know when to take no for an answer, she told him as she backhanded one Sith across the face before stabbing him in the chest. Can you stop harshing on my fun, Calica? I haven't had this much fun since the Jaguar hunt on Shogun a few years before I met you. He kicked a female Sith in the head and watched her slump to the ground. Broken neck. Only 10 more to go. Callista's grin was almost feral, but she knew well to keep her focus. She could see Dylan just as he reached the corner of the building and began placing his charges. Dylan's in position. It won't be long now. You'll have to tell me about that sometime, she said, before lunging sideways and impaling what looked to be thin air before the fizzling of a stealth field revealed a Deveronian. Zan, watch your 6. Some of them are stealthed. Zan spun around at her warning and slashed his blade into a whirlwind of death. He was cutting the hidden apprentices down one at a time and spearing the last one through the throat, revealing a Cathar. Kitty found some bad catnip, Zan growled as he heard a missile explosion from the vicinity of their ships. Turlan, report! Turlan's voice returned slightly breathless. We're fending off some attacks here. That missile took out one of the shuttles. We should still have enough to get our survivors back to Coruscant without a problem. That looks to be the only one they had, and I think they stole it from one of the shuttles anyway. Do you want us to lend a hand anywhere? Let's make a few more pounds of fertilizer here, and then we'll be on our way to the ships. What you can do is grab Sharon and scan for those rat cans. I don't like what they might be up to. But that's only after we clear your path. Expect us in 15 minutes. Canadius out. He killed the comm and turned towards Callista. Time to make tracks. Dylan, set the charges and get clear. They got a double click over the comm, and a few seconds later, Callista saw a figure moving towards them, his lightsaber flashing as he dispatched Sith along the way. After he cleared the building, she saw and felt the first charge go off. All set, Dylan gasped as he skidded to a stop near them and attempted to catch his breath. She grinned and clapped him on the back. Let's blow this ice ball. Zan tapped his comm. Power up the shuttles and get weapons online. Get to your assigned positions. Sharon, you're on my transport. We're coming in hot. Fire on my command. Acknowledge. Zan looked towards Dylan. When did you set for detonation? Right about now. It should cover our exit. As the trio moved towards the transports, Dylan gasped, slightly out of breath. Callista again heard Turlan's double click of acknowledgement. A few seconds later, Turlan's voice came back over the comm. Sir, we have 4 craft, 2 are weapons hot, awaiting your order. As he spoke, Callista heard the faint whine of the repulsors and grinned. She looked up to see the 2 lead shuttles hovering above them, low enough for the trio and the rest of the squad to jump aboard. As they did, she turned to watch the last of Dylan's charges go off. Fire! Take out the rest of the stragglers. Then you are clear for extraction. After catching his breath, Zan removed his helmet and grinned towards Dylan and Callista. Dylan, you've got Mandocarla. Your father would be extremely proud of you. Calica, I'm glad I'm your Ritter and not an enemy. You fight like a strill in defense of its nest. She grinned and saw Dylan smile slightly. As she leaned against the bulkhead and pulled her helmet off, she felt the shuttle surge beneath them before it banked around to strafe at the snow. When the lasers hit it, it boiled. When they hit flesh, well, there wasn't much left that was even worth identifying. At Zan's comment, her grin widened slightly, and she moved in close to him before standing up on her toes to kiss him fiercely. I have you to thank for that, she said softly. Zan grinned, and then his face fell before he looked at Dylan. Don't ask me why I feel this way, Dylan, but your father will be lost if you give up hope. If you keep your head high and keep hope in your heart, then I think your father will return to us all. He placed his hand on Dylan's shoulder. Meanwhile, you did well. I'll be sure to tell the council about your performance. After all, you took out the final base for us. Dylan nodded, though his face was troubled. I'm glad I could help, sir. He sighed. If you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go meditate. He nodded towards both of them and then made his way towards a seat. And I'm going to stop there because we're in an ad. Yes, we are in an ad, so I'm going to take an opportunity to take a drink. And I'm honestly trying to slow down. So, gives me a minute to take a drink. And I do apologize for the ads. Thank you for hanging out and sticking them out. They help support the channel, as well as any bits or subscriptions or anything of the like that you feel inclined to toss my way. Not expected, but appreciated when you can. All right. And also that. You can play with the jacket. All right. And we're back. Callista thought she heard him whispering a prayer to the lady as he moved away. Zan sighed. Tell me, Calica, do you think I'm being unrealistic? About Stefan? She asked, when Dylan was out of earshot. Orihat, I don't know. I can't feel him anymore, but I can feel Andrea, Ari, and Mick together. Mick was with him, so they must be at the temple. Even Mick, he feels drained. Oh, I can take care of that later, yeah. She clicked her tongue in disapproval, but was impressed with Mick's courage and devotion. I think that he was trying to heal Stefan. Zan laughed, but it was both harsh and admiring. Corellian Shiboisi. I figure he'd be too stubborn to give up, and I think that's what Stefan needs right now. But I know what I need right now. Info on the rat cans would do for a start, since I can't have Einar's blood flowing around my feet. Callista shrugged. We lost track of them a few minutes before the last building went up. They were headed in that direction anyway. And Turlin tells me he saw a single shuttle leave before he picked us up. It was headed off towards the remnant as near as he can figure. That was also the direction of that bunker I wanted to check out. Shab, what in the name of the Manda is going on? I wish I knew, Callista responded quietly as she leaned up against him. We've got a few hours to Coruscant. We should see to any wounded and try to get some sleep ourselves. You head to a bunk first, Shiarka. I need to see to my new Padawan. I'll be there in an hour. He leaned in and kissed her. And sometime when this is over, we should consider having a family talk. Callista responded to the kiss by leaning in again. A family talk, Mivin? She was curious, before she rose and stretched her back. It can wait. Go on. The bunk calls you. He kissed her again and embraced her for a moment. Go. A general's work is never done. She raised an eyebrow, but then acquiesced. And then she slipped away to one of the small cabins. Back on, Stefan opened his eyes after he found himself resting in the temple's medical wing. Though closed by Ari's healing, his wounds had required 2 sessions and a Bacta tank. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he awoke to find Jade looking at him from where she sat next to his bed. Hi, he said, wearily as he tried to sit up. Hey, she said lovingly, leaning over him a little bit. Stefan could see a few tears had traced down her cheeks. Are you all right? That's a question I should ask you, she said as she looked at the wound on his chest. I'll be fine, he said, before tracing her cheek. It had to be done, Jade. There was no other way to bring him around. Mick told me, she said as she looked him in the eye. Stefan Card, if you ever do that to me again... Never worry, Stefan said. I don't think a situation will arise where I can't block a blade again. It was at that moment that Andrea walked into the room. She had put on a braver face than Stefan had seen when he'd awoken on the landing pad. She smiled as she sat down opposite her mother. So, how did she fly? Stefan asked after a moment of silence. Andrea grinned, knowing what he was talking about. For my first engagement, she handled well. It may be the last time I fly, though. Stefan nodded. So he asked. Good. I wondered when Edward would get around to doing that. Andrea was taken aback slightly, but she could see him smiling. You don't have to worry, he said. Your father and I already talked about it, Jade told Andrea. You have our blessing on this, as I'm sure you have His Majesty's. Stefan had thought she would start giggling, and then she hugged them both gently with Stefan before heading for the door. Oh, she said as she walked back towards the bed. You asked me to check the landing pad after we had picked you up. Mick and Ari got back inside. Yes, Stefan said as he straightened a little. Andrea reached to her belt and withdrew a lightsaber. Jade stiffened as she handed it to her father. From what I could tell through the Force, it was about where he hit from Mick's Force push. He must have dropped it deliberately before he ran off to the Valiant. I need to get Callista to read it when they return from Renvar, Stefan began to say. I already have, Andrea told him. The traces of anger are faint. The primary emotion I could pull from it is remorse and sorrow. Stefan nodded softly, Jade resting a hand on his shoulder. He felt it as he continued to trace the hilt with his fingers. There was no reason that he could come up with why Einar would have left it behind, unless it was out of horror at realizing what he had done. Stefan knew he had taken a significant risk in leaving himself open to the attack, and he knew that he owed Mick a debt for the timing on the Force push. If not for that, his family wouldn't be here, or just outside the medical room, planning a memorial instead of talking. Stefan sighed at the events of the past several days. Jade, feeling his emotion, moved in for a hug. When do you want to head for home? She asked. I think I'll be ready for travel as soon as Dylan returns with White Squall, he said, as he laid back down. Mick wants to take Ari to Livda right away. It would help her recover. My own recovery would be better served at home as well. But we probably need to head for Livda to check on them later. Okay. Jade nodded and stood up. Get some rest. I'll do the same when I can get the children to. I'll take this. She picked up Einar's lightsaber from where Stefan had set it down. She wasn't sure what to think, holding the weapon that had almost killed her husband. She knew that Stefan would want to keep it safe in his study when it was time to look for him. Giving Stefan one last look, she stood up. He'd already closed his eyes and started to fall asleep again. She smiled before sending another prayer to the lady for keeping him safe. She quietly left the room, joining Andrea and Edward in the hallway. "Is he going to be okay?" Rhaenys asked. "He's going to be fine," she said as she picked up Catherine. "As soon as Dylan returns, we can all head home." "I want to see Daddy," Catherine protested, squirming in Jade's arms. "I know, honey," she said as she hugged their youngest daughter. "We'll go see him tomorrow. Right now, you need to rest, and so do you," Jade said as she looked at Andrea. "I know you're tired from piloting, so go get some rest. Edward, I trust you, so you can stay with her." That said, she got her children and future son-in-law and walked down the corridor towards their quarters. Hi, Gio. You came in at a great spot where I actually had to pause. I'm gonna take a drink of water. Okay. No, you're fine. I was actually at a stopping point, so you're okay. I know. I'm working on that. I had scene breaks put in here, but the formatting's a little different. All right. In transit to Coruscant. After getting things sorted with his new Padawan and going over field reports for most of the evening shift, Zan returned to his private cabin for a few hours of shut-eye. In terms of actual mission parameters, Renvar was a success. In terms of intelligence work, however, it was a complete failure. Nothing was left by the Sith to shed any light on their current activities. Not only that, but the inability to check out the hidden bunker on Renvar and the appearance of an Imperial commando squad left Zan feeling that whatever he missed was pretty big. As he climbed into bed, too tired to notice if Callista was still awake, the feeling of impending disaster threatened to choke him. "Why, in the name of the Manda, is this bothering me so much?" he thought. Even in her sleep, Callista could sense his distress. She reached over and pulled him in close, snuggling into his chest. Renvar had been a shock for her, but it had gone pretty well, considering. She snuggled closer, the thought waking her up some. "Are you all right, Sierra?" she whispered. "I'd be better if I didn't have a gap in what we should know," he grumbled. He shook his head and tried to clear his thoughts. "Or maybe I'm overtired. Go back to sleep, Sierra. 0700 comes quickly." He leaned over and kissed her gently before spooning closer and trying to fall asleep. Callista groaned in resignation, but that faded as Zan kissed her. With a sigh of contentment, she too fell asleep. The next thing she knew, the chrono on the bedside table was beeping insistently. With a muttered curse, she rolled over and swatted at it with her eyes still closed. "Can't we just sleep?" she mumbled. Zan popped an eye open and nearly crushed the chrono with the force. Jedi and sleep do not coexist well, apparently. Maybe they won't notice if we slept in? 2 hours of sleep was not nearly enough after the Battle of Renvar, and he was exhausted. Callista moaned in resignation. "I feel like I could sleep for a week." She trailed off as she reached into the Force. "Stefan's in the temple infirmary." "Force, I don't want to move." She rolled over and buried her face in his shoulder. "I'm sure they'd understand if we slept longer." Zan scowled. If Stefan's in the infirmary, shouldn't we wake Dylan and let him see his father? Plus, if Stefan is back, I want to go and give him a few more broken bones for having us think he was dead. The old man got lucky. Callista sighed and ran a hand through her sleep-tousled hair. Luck has nothing to do with it. She frowned as she read the impressions she was getting. He does nothing without purpose. That being said, we should wake Dylan. She broke off momentarily as she reached out again, searching for Ari and Mick. What came back to her through the force left her swearing in surprise. After we see Master Stefan, she corrected herself, we need to pay a visit to Mick and Ari. Something's different about them. But first, I recommend a good breakfast and a shower. Zan said nothing but looked at her questioningly. He knew that her sense of subtle movements in the force was stronger than his due to her being a healer. Different, he mused, before Callista interrupted his thoughts with food and a shower. She nodded. As to Ari and Mick, it can wait until we have a solid meal in our stomachs. With that, she rose stiffly and ambled toward the fresher, grabbing a towel and glancing over her bare shoulder as she went. That look could melt Durasteel, and the Durasteel would be happy about it, Zan thought as he saw her look. He quickly grabbed his own towel and made his way to the fresher. Callista couldn't help grinning and stealing glances at Zan as they dressed, even though she had to keep batting his hands away. She relented momentarily and paused in donning her Beskar gown to kiss him deeply. We'll have more time later, she told him with a smile. Though it's tempting to stay here, I do want to find out what happened. She reached up with her left hand, caressing his cheek softly before doing up the last clips. After a moment, she took her cloak and clipped it to her shoulders. Zan had to agree with her statement, and as he finished putting on his own armor, he went to the closet and pulled out a unique robe. It was half Kama, the Mandalorian kilt, and half Jedi robe. He slipped it over his armor and clipped his helmet to his belt before pulling up the robe's hood. There, a bit more traditional. Now then, food. I just hope to the Force the calf is tons better this morning than it has been. She raised an eyebrow. I still can't understand how you can drink that stuff, but I hope it's better too. She took a few moments to brush out her hair and braided it before making her way into the common area. Then she clipped her sabers to her belt before making her way to the door. Dylan's cabin was just a few doors down from theirs. I hope they do better on the omelets today too. They were rubbery last time. Ship messes aren't known for high-quality cuisine, Siarika, Zan said with a smirk before ringing the chime. Dylan, Vaude, a new day awaits us, as does your father. But first, we're hungry. Get your shebs in gear. Dylan answered the call, his voice fogged with sleep. I'll be out in 5 minutes. And then the line went dead. True to his word, he appeared 5 minutes later, straightening his robes before stepping into the corridor. We're close to Coruscant, aren't we? He regarded them for a long moment, noting that they, too, looked tired. He hoped they all would have a chance to rest once they reached the temple, but he knew that there was no guarantee of how things would play out. He then grinned. Many things are said of Mandalorians, but the most important: never turn one down when he offers you food. Zan grinned. You've been studying up on us well. That's right. The ship's mess isn't the greatest, but it's food. Besides, in an hour or so, I think you'll be too busy with other things besides trying to eat. He held out his arm for Callista to take, and they made their way down to the mess hall. Dylan, do you notice anything in the Force that's different than how it was when you went to sleep? Dylan frowned, focusing first on his father. That's much better, but that's not what you're asking, is it? He regarded Zan curiously for a moment before he focused again. I know Master Din was with Dad on Coruscant. And then his voice trailed off. He looked at Zan, his eyes wide. Something's different, but I can't put my finger on it. Zan nodded. Your father has returned from the dead. And now Mick and Ari have a surprise for us all. He smiled. You see why I said hope is a powerful tool? Dylan nodded as well, his eyes huge as the implications of Zan's words sank in. He traded a look with Callista, and she laid a hand on his arm. How is this even possible? Last I knew, Dad was close to death. Callista's touch was gentle as she tried to offer him strength. As near as I can figure, Mick was with him and tried to do something to help. But in doing so, something changed, and Ari... She trailed off, and they continued talking about other things as they ate, trying to keep the mood light. They finished their meal, but Zan lingered to drain another large cup of caf. Dylan, about your actions on Renvar. Dylan's eyebrows crept upwards, and he swallowed before he answered, sensing Zan's mood shift. Yes, sir? He'd almost called Zan by his title, but felt that being formal would be appropriate. His face was open and curious as he waited for Zan to continue. I'm going to place your name in for a commendation, Zan said, grinning. Not only did you fight through your despair, you bravely fought against the Sith without succumbing to the darkness that can come with grief. If not for your actions in setting those charges and destroying the last bunker, the fight may well have been a suicide mission. The fact that we made it back to the ships is more to your work than it was Callista's and mine. A faint color crept to Dylan's cheeks, and for a moment he stared at his plate before he responded. Thanks. In all honesty, I fought for him. He emphasized the last word, and Callista understood. Dylan had taken his grief, but instead of letting it consume him, he turned to let the Force guide him. Zan smiled. I know. We could feel it. And those are the actions of a true warrior, not despair or anger, but hope and fighting for a cause that is bigger than yourself, and to honor those who are here and those who have fallen. It's what we Mandaware call Mando Carla. It's more than guts, it's belief and purpose. Dylan smiled, but didn't look away. Thank you, Zan. Callista, that means a lot coming from you. To hear such things come from a Mandalorian meant that the Mandalorian in question thought very highly of you and your abilities. Just then, the proximity alarm blared to life. Well, it looks like it's family reunion time. Shame, isn't there usually a barbecue or something for events like this? Zan then activated his wristcom. This is Master Canadius. Prepare for landing. Stay with your teams, and team leaders report to the Sergeant at Arms. It's been a pleasure working with you. Callista smiled, and her hand found Zan's as she watched Dylan for a moment. She could tell he was very pleased by Zan's compliment, but that it still warred with his concern for his father. After a moment of silence, Dylan rose, taking his plate to the recycler. Callista glanced to the chronometer on the wall. They were inside the Coruscant system and should land at the temple within 10 minutes. She grinned at Zan's comment and felt some tension drained from her shoulders. Come on, Zan, let's get ready ourselves, she told him with a smile and a gentle kiss. Zan returned it fiercely and smiled before cleaning up his own dishes. Yes, let's. Dylan, we'll let you get ready, and then the first thing we do once we're in the temple is find your father. I'll see you there. With that, the young man turned and was gone. Callista watched him go. He's pleased, knowing his father survived, she told Zan quietly. He's not the only one. His wife and the rest of his kids are, too, including Mick, Ari, and yourself. I'm even glad the old man is still here. But you'll need to remind me why I can't break a few of his bones for getting sloppy. Callista made an exasperated noise. We both know Stefan's an excellent swordsman. That's something I plan on asking him myself when I see him. It's not like him. She fell silent, though there is the possibility he might have done it intentionally. You saw how Einar was acting. Maybe he figured it was the only way. She shrugged. Of course, I'm just speculating. If it were me, Einar would be on the ground with ripper holes in his head. I know anyone can be redeemed, but I don't deal with traitors, Zan said, his voice tight. They returned to their quarters and gathered the rest of their things before making their way towards the docking bay. The computer blared out another warning. Entering atmosphere, landing in 2 minutes. Callista nodded to herself. Zan had a valid point. Aner had changed since Korriban. Privately, she had to admit she was curious why Stefan had left himself open, intentionally or not. As they walked down the cramped corridors of the transport, Callista's hand found Zan's again. She hoped that they all could get answers. Finally, just as they reached the boarding ramp, she felt the craft settle to the permacrete of the landing bay with a gentle thump. Since when did they put speed bumps on the landing pad? Zan asked. The hatch opened and revealed the exterior of the temple. Given the height of the landing bay, Zan concluded it was on the medbay level. Think they're trying to tell you something, Sierra? Callista snorted. If they are, they haven't yet learned how to be subtle. Dylan grinned and followed closely as they exited the transport before weaving their way through the docking bay into the corridors beyond. I swear, if they have me scheduled for rounds, they have another thing coming. I'm checking on my family before I do anything else, she said firmly. Zan laughed. Alec, Healer, Jersarin, he said, just to tweak her, and winked at Dylan. I want to see what that secret is. Callista eyed him momentarily, but decided to let it slide. Ahead, she saw the doors to the infirmary slide open as they neared. She could sense Stefan close and turned towards the room just as Dylan did. The healer on duty eyed them for a moment. Master Card is resting and not to be... Callista cut him off. I think he'll want to see his family, don't you think? She said, rather firmly. Zan crossed his arms and glared at the healer. And it's not a wise policy to piss off 2 Mandoade just after they've returned from a battle. He nudged Dylan forward. Go on, Vaude, lead the way. The healer seemed somewhat flustered and stammered an apology. Certainly, sir. Please, go right in. Without further invitation, Dylan slipped around the group, not caring how the young healer stared at the 2 armored Mandalorians. Callista twitched and looked at him again. Shab, stop staring! His cheeks flamed, and she felt a little sympathy for him. He must be new to the medical rotations. Within a few strides, Dylan had crossed to his father's room and slipped inside. It might be the fan. I don't know. Or the furnace. The furnace is right below me. I unfortunately have no control over that. Stefan had been resting, but woke up instantly as he felt Dylan's presence. He tried to sit up, and Callista moved around with Dylan to help him to a sitting position. Easy now, she said, greeting him with a smile. You gave us quite a scare. Oh, it's music is cycling. Sorry about that. Zan walked in and hid a smirk. Scare my shubs. We thought you became one with the Force, old man. And you'd better explain why I shouldn't add to your healing time after a stunt like that. Stefan grinned and laughed slightly. It's good to see you, too. He paused to embrace Dylan, who then sat on the edge of the bed. It was here at the temple. Mick and I had arrived not long before Aner, and we tried to cut him off. I deliberately left myself open. It was the only way I knew to stop him and make him realize how far he'd fallen. Zan shook his head but didn't respond, knowing his feelings weren't very Jedi-like. He looked at Callista and then sighed. We noticed. But seeing you around still is good. Especially now that you're back. Once you're healed, I'm going to beat your shebs in a sparring session at some point. But we have other questions that need answering first. Stefan chuckled. Since that sparring match I had with Mick before Turlon's trials, I've meant to take you up on that. He looked squarely at them. It has to do with Ari and Mick. You felt it too, didn't you? I can tell you a little, but you'll have to ask them about the rest. Welcome in. Thanks for joining us this evening. Zan scratched his head and frowned. Okay, where are the general and long, tall, and ugly? He winked. The mutual joy Mick and Zan had with messing with each other had been a common occurrence since they were introduced. I believe they're here in the temple. They both needed rest after what happened. Stefan grinned and shook his head at Zan's comment before continuing. As to what happened up there, after Einar's attack, I was in a bad way. I was drawn into the Force, but not completely. Andrea tells me my body had gone almost transparent, much like one would as their spirit passes to the Force. It was Mick and Ari that managed to bring me back. Zan traded a look with Callista and raised his eyebrows. Have you heard anything similar happening before, Calica? I know of Jedi fating at death. The technique is taught to most of us when we become knights. But I've never heard of bringing someone back from the brink. Callista shook her head and frowned. Naish, I've never heard of someone coming back from the brink like that. She regarded Stefan for a moment. He seemed to be healing well, but he might need another dip in the bacta tank. Stefan smiled and drew Callista into a hug. I'll be all right. You should find Mick and Ari. They're in Ari's master's quarters, apartment 334, I think. One thing before we go. He filled Stefan in on the details of their fight with the Sith and Dylan's actions in destroying the bunker. He added that he would recommend Dylan receive an official commendation from the council. He did it all for you, Vaude. You should be proud of him. I know Calica and I are. Stefan glanced toward Dylan. I am proud indeed to call Dylan my son. His tone was warm as he gazed at the young man, and Callista sensed something pass between them. And I'm going to stop there because we're in an ad. Sorry, guys. Ad time! Yes. Alright. We're in an ad, so I'm going to take the opportunity to get a drink. Alright. Sorry for the extra noise. Oh, music is cycling. Sorry about that. Oh, you have turbo, okay? I'm talking to those people who don't have turbo and are not subscribed. I do try not to read during the ads because people miss stuff if I do, so I'm trying to be nice. Yes. So I try to stop when I see the ad notification pop up. Doesn't always work, but most of the time I'll catch it. Alright. Okay, and we're back. I'll certainly pass that along to the council, though perhaps it would be better if you did so yourself, after a few days. We all need some time anyway. Zan nodded. But not too long. I sense the Force shifting again, and what waits in the shadows remains unclear. He frowned and shook his head momentarily before smiling at Dylan. Make sure your buoy rests, Vaude. I'd hate for you or him to run into a cross Callista. He winked. We'd better find the others. I want answers, and tweaking the rogue will help make my day. Stefan laughed and shook his head as Dylan smiled. You can be sure of that, Zan. Dylan told him with a smile before Stefan shooed them off. As they left, Callista couldn't help smiling. I'm glad to see him in such good spirits, considering. I can't imagine what that must have been like, to reach the brink and almost step across. Zan paused. Oops. Sorry. We'll all cross that threshold at some point, Calica. But we know this existence is more of a dream than being one with the Force. I assume that Stefan will have gained a lot more knowledge and wisdom he can impart since he had one foot in the other realm of existence. That would temper your feelings, bring you closer to joy and peace than anything dark. Indeed, she said softly. He did seem much more at ease than one might expect of someone having experienced something like that. She was silent, her hand finding his as they made their way to the lift tube and the master's residency. And that is the end of chapter 20. Yes, I'm still playing with audio volume, so things might be a little janky. Yes, cozy vibes. Cozy vibes. Alright. And this is... I'm about to start reading. Thank you. We have... I'm going to switch that. That is very not the right kind of music for what we're going to be reading. That's better. Oh, Sigma! Well, thank you for staying past your bedtime. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed. And have a good sleep. Okay, get some good rest. Yes. I'm gonna take another drink here so I don't lose my voice. We have one more chapter. Yes, I'm trying consciously to read a little bit slower and actually breathe. We do have one more chapter, so I'm going to get ready to read that here in a minute. I'm just taking extra things out of my pocket because I apparently forgot I had keys in my pocket. But chapter 21 is actually the final chapter. Have a great evening, Sigma. Get some good rest. Okay. Chapter 21. Din Apartments, Jedi Temple. The room was dark and cool, yet beads of sweat were visible on her forehead. Her breathing came regular and even, but shallow, barely heard above the beeps and whirs of the medical equipment they'd hauled into her master's quarters. Micron hadn't slept, but he hadn't felt this good physically since before the Vong Wars. He marveled at her appearance and pressed a cool cloth to Ari's forehead. It was as though they'd stepped back in time to the day they met. Despite her weakened state, her skin glowed with youth, firm and supple. The stress lines and wrinkles had faded away completely. He could hardly remember their time beyond the veil, like a quickly fading dream, but he could still remember flashes. Ari stirred and Micron checked the monitors beside the bed. Everything seemed okay, but she felt weaker and weaker in the force. "Hold tight, Princess," Mick whispered. "We'll get this sorted." "Callista," Ari whispered in return. "I'll ring her up on the comm." Mick nodded and rose to get his comlink when there was a chime at the door. Stretching out his senses, he caught two familiar presences just outside. "Oh," Mick smiled. "Right. Here's me playing Space Cadet again." Ari smiled weakly as Mick went to the door. In full Beskar Gam, minus helmets, Callista and Zan stood at the doorway, looking haggard but hale and hearty. The rogue smirked a bit as he beckoned them inside. "Glad to see if the two of you made it." They entered the dimly lit quarters. "Any new scars, Zan? Face like yours, it's hard to tell." "Ha ha," Zan chuckled. "Not everyone can defy time and age backwards like some." "Joking aside," Callista interrupted before the inevitable insult battle truly began. "What happened? We all felt the brief tremors in the force, but seeing you, Ari, and Stefan only raises more questions. I've never seen or heard of anything like this." "Well, I assume Stefan gave you the details of what happened on the roof?" "For the most part," Zan folded his arms. "But even he didn't have any ideas about your current state." Well, we tried something. Mick shrugged. Something neither of us had done before. But Stefan was fading and our options were few. I think my time on the other side allowed me to sense where he was. I didn't know what would happen if we followed him or even if we could, but we had to try. You committed suicide. Zan shook his head in disbelief. Nothing quite so dramatic, Mick explained. But in a sense, I guess so. Ari and I joined spirits and entered a deep meditation. We left our bodies. It did feel a bit like dying, and I don't recommend anybody try it. It was a miracle we came back at all. Callista took a seat beside Ari's bed, and Zane leaned against the wall. Both studied the rogue intently as he continued his explanation. That place, if you can call it that, is an eternity of fog, white, and images. It's indescribable. Trying to explain how I found Stefan and what we saw there would be impossible. We knew we had to get back, though. For Stefan, he had Andrea as a link to the living world. We could sense her through the fog, and Stefan was able to use her as a guiding beacon to go back to his body. Ari and I were a bit stuck, though. Stuck? Callista asked. We couldn't figure out how to get back, so we tried something again. One of these days, Zan interjected, your habit of trying things will get you into serious trouble. But given the circumstances, I suppose there wasn't much to go on. Exactly, Mick nodded. We focused on memories of ourselves. We tried to find our way back by remembering our life together. What came to us was the day I proposed to Ari. We found each other then, reliving one of the happiest days of our lives. The memory was so clear and so detailed as to be real. I asked her to come with me, and then things went white. I woke up on the rooftop with Ari next to me, and the two of us looked as we do now. So the Force returned you as you remembered yourselves? Zan arched an eyebrow. That's as good a guess as I can manage, Mick told him with a shrug. But why are you here, hale and hearty, while Master Ari lies weakened? Callista glanced towards her teacher. I've been trying to figure that out, Micron sighed. But I'm no healer. What can you sense, Callie? The young woman moved towards Ari's side and laid a hand on her forehead. Her eyes drifted closed, and Mick could feel her drawing on the Force. Ari's face looked relaxed, but the color wasn't there. After a moment, Callista withdrew and looked at Mick. She feels fine. But, Zan interjected, knowing there was more. But I can't find the phoenix inside her, Callista said to Micron. What does that mean? I don't know. The rogue looked pained and exasperated. I hate this damn prophecy, this legacy, this curse. She's given so much already, but it always asks for more. I don't know what to do. Ari stirred then, and the three grew quiet. Mick went to his wife's side. Weakly, without opening her eyes, she took his hand. Livda, she breathed. Livda? Callista arched an eyebrow. But there are far better healers and equipment here on Coruscant. Micron shrugged as Ari slipped back into an uneasy sleep. Yeah, I know. But I learned long ago not to question her in moments like this. If she thinks going to Livda will help, then that's where we'll go. We? Zan asked. Ari and I will go, Mick said. Major Maxwell can continue the cleanup efforts over Endor. I'll submit the order via Ari's comlink, and that information doesn't leave this room. What information? Callista and Zan asked simultaneously. Exactly, Mick grinned. As for Renvar, I'm sure there's a lot to go over with that, but it'll have to be without me. Stefan can handle the council, though I'm sure he'll need the two of you present for the debriefing. I'm going to snag Turlon and make ion trails. You keep a contact, Rogue, Zan said. Roger that. Mick nodded and then went to a small desk in Ari's quarters before scribbling down what looked like random numbers on a piece of flimsy. That's my personal encryption code for the Firebird. If you need me, that's your ticket to a nearly instant response. You keep that safe now. Spast, Zan sighed. I was going to fence it on the black market to the slicer with the highest bid. Callista elbowed him in the ribs before turning to Mick. We will, she said. In the meantime, is there anything we can do to help? Just keep me in the loop. Mick shrugged. I don't know how long we'll be on Livda, but maybe once things cool down here, you guys could visit? Roger that. Zan nodded. Some R&R would do us all some good. After saying their goodbyes, Callista and Zan left, and Micron set to getting Ari ready for the flight to Livda. He calmed Turlon and had the boy help him get everything set after explaining to him his and Ari's appearance, of course. In 4 hours, Micron sat in the cockpit of the Firebird and watched the stars turn to lines as the ship hurtled towards Livda. Aboard the Firebird. I understand that, sir. He made the title sound like a curse, even though the static of the hypercom transmission. However, I must speak with the General to confirm these orders. Protocol hasn't changed much since I've been out, Colonel, Mick shot back. And I've had time to review the new ones. You don't need to hear it from her. You have the orders and her seal is on them. That constitutes a direct command. You follow or you resign. It's not a tough call. You listen here, you arrogant... So, we're throwing out decorum then. Micron cut him off. In that case, Maxwell, you can take whatever tirade you've been working on and space it. Ari's sick. She couldn't speak with you if she wanted to. You have her orders. Follow them. I would think a flag colonel could handle a simple cleanup up. Our leaves have been stamped and approved, so whatever you have to say beyond that is irrelevant. I know you forged those orders, Colonel Din, Maxwell said coldly. Your disregard for procedure and general lack of military discipline may have been overlooked in your day, but you won't last long in the new military. I'll see to that, personally. I don't care who you're married to or who you claim to be. Micron stared back at the image of Colonel Brent Maxwell, and when he spoke, his voice was tinged with ice. You don't know me. So I'll explain this once. Don't ever threaten me. Maxwell looked as though he would speak, but Micron cut the transmission instead. That was probably a bit less cordial than he's used to, Turlin said from the Firebird's cockpit hatch. Stuffed up preening hawkbat, Mick grunted. He wouldn't have lasted a day in the rebellion. I wouldn't know, Turlon said before sitting in the co-pilot's chair. But he has a point, Grandfather. The New Republic military has now had the time to grow into a real military with tradition, protocols, and the like. Recruits aren't as hard to come by, so they can afford to be stricter. Pomp and ceremony. I know. That doesn't mean I have to like it. How's your grandmother? Resting. Turlon shrugged. It's so frustrating. She feels fine. Her vitals check out better than average. She's just not there. Not completely. The rogue was silent. It was pretty much what he'd expected. Have you researched the Phoenix prophecy at all, Turlon? Give me 1 second. That is not what I want to be listening to right now. Okay. Turlon's eyes widened as sudden comprehension rushed over him like a wave. Shaza, he swore. I know what's happening. Micron arched an eyebrow. Really? Because I'm completely lost. I thought the whole thing was over with Livda all those years ago. No. Turlon shook his head. I've spent most of my life researching the Phoenix prophecy. After the things I've seen, well, I'm inclined to agree with you, Grandfather. It's a curse. Great, Mick sighed. So what's going on? Well, Turlon said as he closed his eyes. And the great bird did dwell until the stars were outshone by her light. Her fire was like the sun to the world. She shrank then, weakened, and lay dormant for a time before fading from life completely. Whoa, Mick interrupted. Are you saying the Phoenix is dying? It seems to be what the old text implies, and it fits with what's happened so far, Turlon explained. But there's more to it. And the world was dark in the absence of her light, and all who knew her mourned. But from the ashes of death, new life was born again, and the phoenix was stronger for it. So, the phoenix is dying, but it'll come back, Mick translated. But what happens to the host while the bird is dead? I don't know, Grandfather. Turlon shook his head. The old texts don't seem to cover much about the host. They seem to be secondary to the phoenix. Figures. Mick spit. That's what I hate about religions, kid. For all the peaceful, love your neighbor stuff, they sure have a nasty habit of completely overlooking people. I never thought of it that way. Don't look too deep into it, kid, Mick said as he rose to check on Ari. I'm just a cynical old man. Hey, not by the looks of it, Turlon told him with a smirk. Micron tossed his grandson an easy smile before slipping out of the cockpit and down to the curving corridors of his ship. Hey there, beautiful, Micron whispered as he brushed a strand of hair away from Ari's face. She stirred, and the hint of a smile crossed her face, but she didn't wake. We're nearing Livda, Mick continued anyway. Somehow he knew she could still hear him. We'll have you snug in your own bed in no time. I do hope you know what you're doing, though. I'm no healer, and neither is Turlon. I don't like the idea of you facing whatever this is alone. By reflex or something else, Ari's hand fell into Mick's, and she squeezed it. Micron chuckled. Hey now, I'm supposed to be reassuring you. The rogue leaned close and kissed her forehead before returning to the cockpit. Grandfather, Turlon said as Micron slid into the pilot's chair. You've got an incoming transmission. It looks like it's coming from Master Card. Put him on. Mick nodded as the image cleared. Stefan appeared to be in his study at the temple, but the state of things and the bags in the background told the rogue that the Jedi was heading somewhere. Stefan, Mick said in greeting. Micron. Heading home? The rogue asked. It's partly your idea, Stefan replied. Or, I guess I should say Ari's. Some time at home will do me well, I believe. We all need some rest. I can't argue with you there, Mick agreed. That being said, don't ever pull a stunt like that again. I think I've heard that same thing from just about everyone I know in the past few days, Stefan told him with a sigh. It just means you should listen. Aye, Stefan nodded. I know, and I don't plan on doing anything of the sort. But I'm calling to check on Ari. Even in my state, I feel something isn't as it should be. Turlon believes that the phoenix is dying, Micron said without preamble, and I'm inclined to trust him. I can't find the bird anywhere in her, nor sense it in the force at large. The kid says the phoenix will rise again, but there's no telling what that will do to Ari. I don't know what to say. Stefan looked genuinely at a loss. She's in my thoughts, Micron. You'll keep me posted? I will, Mick said. She's a fighter. I've still got hope. Aye, that she is. In any case, the rogue said. Got a sit rep on the others? Zan has taken his new Padawan on a fact-finding mission to learn what he can about the various anomalies on Renvar, Stefan began. Anomalies? A building that was both out of place and radiating with dark energy was overlooked. Also, a full contingent of Imperials was there. They aided for a while in the fight, but vanished shortly after. Wonderful, Mick sighed. I do love loose ends. Canadians will sort it out, though. What about Callie? Is she running with Zan on this one? Actually, she's coming with us to Catan, Stefan replied. I've been meaning to set up a new Praxium there, and she and her Padawan have offered to help with some of the initial setup. Always working, Mick grinned. Well, not always, Stefan told him with a smile. Mostly it's just cleanup and minor repair work on the monastery. It's just a much-needed break from saving the galaxy. Sometimes it's just good to slow down and do some manual labor. No argument there. Listen, we're 5 minutes out from planetfall. You take care of yourself and keep me posted. Aye, the Jedi nodded. You as well. The transmission ended, and Micron sat back momentarily, lost in his thoughts. "Grandfather?" Turlon said, breaking his reverie. "Right." Micron shook himself. "Why don't you head back, secure Ari, and strap herself in?" "Aye." As Turlon made his way forward, Micron pushed the levers, reverting them to real space. Starlines whirled about and stopped before hanging still in the blackness of space. Directly ahead, the blue sphere of Livda swelled to fill the viewport. They'd been taking shifts watching over her. She lay in the bed, hooked up to an IV and a heart rate monitor. The steady beeping kept time as it trickled slowly by. It was Turlon's shift. Micron lay on the couch in the living room, trying in vain to get some sleep. It was just past 0200, and a steady rain fell through the night. His eyes had just closed when he sensed it. "Grandfather!" Turlon's voice and the terrible scream he heard in the forest snapped the rogue wide awake. He was on his feet in a heartbeat, and at Ari's side in less. "What happened?" Micron asked, already stretching out to his wife's silent form. "The Phoenix," Turlon breathed. "It's dead." The boy was sitting against the wall, his legs pulled up to his chest and his hands clutching his head. He knew Turlon had a part of the Phoenix within him. He couldn't imagine the kid's pain. In point of fact, he had a hard time registering it over his own. Not only could he not sense the Phoenix, but he could no longer sense Ari either. Her body lay still, her heart was beating, her breathing shallow but regular, but she wasn't there. She was gone. Micron's feet carried him outside and into the rain without realizing it. He stood on the grassy lawn in front of the house and stared into the stormy sky. Force energy welled up inside him, bubbling beneath the surface, threatening to overtake him. He let it build. He cursed the force, the prophecy that kept trying to steal his wife from him. With a cry that was nearly inhuman, he released the energy in a torrent of pure force into the sky. Across the planet, people stood in awe of the blinding light on the horizon. The clouds parted above where he stood. Trees on the edge of the lawn bent beneath his onslaught. With all his strength, he cried, "Ari!" The rogue fell to his knees and his energy spent. The clouds slowly began to edge back together. Rain fell in a circle around the house, tears staining his cheeks, and he clutched the grass beneath his fingers, staring into the sky. He knelt there for what seemed like hours, drained, empty. The clouds continued to close in. Through the opening in the clouds, he caught a glimpse of what looked like a falling star. The light grew brighter and brighter until it filled his vision, and larger it grew still. Drained as he was, he could feel the energy growing within the force and hear what sounded like a great bird singing. Forgetting his fatigue, the rogue ran into the house. The light outside shone through the windows in orange and golden beams. Turlon stood at Ari's side, gazing at her glowing form. Micron also stood in awe as her body hovered slowly above the bed. The light shrank, concentrated, and penetrated the house before coming to rest above Ari's floating form. And then it took shape, and Micron knew that the Phoenix lived again. With a screech, the great bird of fire dove into Ari's chest and came to rest where it belonged. Like a leaf on the wind, she floated back down to the bed. The color returned slowly to her face, and the mark of the Phoenix appeared as it had all of those years ago beneath her left eye. Turlon, too, seemed invigorated. He looked at his hands as though seeing them for the first time. Micron rushed to Ari's side, taking her hands in his, and he brushed back her hair from her face. Her icy blue eyes fluttered open, and his heart skipped a beat. "Silly rogue," she whispered with a smile. "You should know I'll never leave you." "I love you, Ari, and I love you, Mick." They embraced then, and the force danced with them. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, Micron knew completely that his wife was with him and that she was there to stay. To be continued in redemption. All right. And that is the end of chapter 21. And it's only 8:30. Okay. So, with that in mind, for those of you who are in chat for the first time or have been here a couple of times, please feel free to ask questions. We have gotten through several stories at this point, so if you have any questions, comments, would like to know anything, would like me to translate something that you might not understand, because there were several Mandoa words in the chapter, please feel free to ask. There was a lot going on in the last couple of chapters. So, lots going on. Lots to process. Alright. And I'm going to take a drink while you guys have a think. Just of this story. It's not the last story. Trust me. Let's see. I'll have to actually go look. But no, this is not the last story. I can tell you that much. I'm gonna actually double check myself because I'm trying to keep track of where we're at. Let's see. But I can tell you. Let's see. So this is... So we are currently in the second series. The first series had 4 stories. The second series has 2, and we just finished reading the first of 2. So, and we're in an ad. Please be patient while we get through the ad. So yes. So this is story number... I just finished story number 5. Story number 5. So... Alright. But yes. Yeah. We're in an ad break for another 48 seconds. So... I'm gonna answer that once we get out of ad space. And we're back. I suppose the more accurate question would be how many stories are left. Because, as I said, this is the second series. The first series was called the Healer Quadrilogy. There were 4 stories. This second series that we're in has 2 stories. This story that we just finished is called To All Things an End. The second story in this series is called Redemption, which we will start reading next week. And then after that, we've got... I had to actually go look it up because I can't remember. After that, we have another series that's got two stories, and then the final series currently has 4, and that's the one that I'm currently working on. So we've got a ways to go. I'm trying to only read a couple of chapters every stream so that we don't go too fast. So I'm trying to spread it out a little bit. And I generally don't read on Sundays. I stream every Wednesday and every other Sunday. Wednesdays are my reading streams. And every other Sunday, those are actually, I'm trying to turn them into workshop streams. The intent with those is to spend the stream conversing with you guys, getting some feedback and input on whatever I'm currently working on. So, and I'm trying to get to the point where I can interact with you guys a little bit more, and the workshop streams is a good opportunity for me to do that. I don't tend to interact as much with you guys in chat as I would like to during the reading streams, mostly because I'm trying to stay focused and read and not get super distracted. But I do enjoy having everybody here and seeing everybody interact in chat. I also have no idea where the... Yeah, I also have no idea where the closed captions are popping up, so I may have to move my little cat friend to one side or the other. I haven't figured out. I'll have to go watch the VOD, I guess. Figure out where to put my little cat friend. I initially wasn't using closed captions, so it didn't even cross my mind that it would get in the way. So I might have to do a little bit of rearranging. So yeah. There is one story in the first series that's just a one-shot. It's literally like one chapter, not even a chapter. It's like a half chapter, and that's all. It's really short. It's kind of a it's generally called a one-shot. So that one's a pretty quick read. And if you guys would like to read at your own pace, the link to my Archive of Our Own page is down below the stream. So, yes. I'm having so much fun. My biggest struggle is actually slowing down and remembering to breathe. That's been my struggle. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. And the fact that I get to share something that I'm really passionate about with you guys, that makes it even more fun. I really, really enjoy being able to take my evenings and share that with you guys. Oh, maybe. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. The reason I don't generally game stream like SWTOR or something like that is because my internet can't handle it. So I would honestly have to do a test stream to see if it would handle things like words on stream or something like that. Because honestly, my internet is kind of a punk. So I'm not sure if it would handle that. But I have been thinking about that just to kind of give myself a little bit of a break here and there. Oh, yeah. Okay, no. I know what you're talking about. So yes, there is a game called Spirit City Lo-Fi Sessions, and it's not really a game in the general sense. It is, but it's no, I know, but I know what he's talking about. I can have it usually running in the background. So, yes, there is a game called Spirit City Lo-Fi Sessions, and it's honestly more of a productivity and focus tool than an actual game. I mean, there's some game elements to it, but if I mean, and that's a great point. It's a great focus tool. Yeah, yeah. I might. I'll have to try that and see if it'll like run in the background or set myself a timer on my phone or yeah. I'll have to think about that. There's also I do have commands that you guys can use if you think that I need to take a break and um, take a drink, take a stretch, get a snack. I do have those. So, but nobody uses them. Nobody uses them. Um, yeah. So I'll have to think about that. But I really am trying to not overload my connection by running tons of extra things. So, but I will definitely think about that. It's a great suggestion, honestly. Because let me tell you, I mean, I can understand how you must feel after 7, 8 hours of streaming and talking. 2 hours is about all I can handle. So, Gio, I totally understand needing to take breaks. It's important. But as yeah, yeah. For me, that's what my stream is. I spend hour and a half, 2 hours just straight talking. So by the time I'm done, I'm done. But I am trying to remember to hydrate. And if you guys don't see me hydrating and I'm starting to like go a little scratchy, please use the hydrate command. That's why it's there. I also have a stretch command. It's a little early. I have quite a few cute little commands. And there are some actually that are specifically for our little cat friend, like this one. And you can pet the cat. Yeah. So yes. I will have to watch the VOD a little bit to see where the closed captions are popping up. Sigma actually made a great point. I generally don't watch the VODs, but in this particular case, I think I will to see where I need to move our little cat friend to. Might have to move them to one side or the other. So I will have a think and have a watch. Any other questions, comments, inputs? Also, thank you very much to everybody who has been here this evening. Taba, Geo, Desnipa, Mr. XI, everybody else, Sigma, even though they went to bed. I appreciate each and every one of you a lot. Probably more than you know. A lot of times, I'll go live, I'll stream, and even if I'm streaming to one or two people, like, that's okay. I'm streaming to share. I'm not streaming to really get a huge audience. I mean, that would be cool, don't get me wrong. But mainly streaming because I want to share the things that I really enjoy, which for me, that's the writing. Yeah, that's exactly why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it to become famous. doing it because I love it. And so far, everybody else seems to like it too, which is cool. And that's what I want at the end of the day. So, all right. Let's see. I'm missing a... Alright. Also, Tiro, if you're still here, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate you. Gonna see what? Hold on, give me 1 second. Oh. Okay. Give me 2 seconds. I'm looking for a array target. Let's see. Does anybody have a suggestion for a raid target? Seeing who's alive right now. Let's see. Ooh, I could raid into Panda. She's streaming Palia. Let's see. That's my standard raid message. Is it gonna let me copy? Oh, goodness. Yeah, for whatever reason, I have a really hard time copying it from within OBS. You're very welcome, Gio, and thank you everyone who came by to hang out with me. I appreciate you. I'm gonna raid out to Miss Panda. She's also part of Survivor Squad. And so... Aw, thank you. Alright, so I'm going to get us started with the raid. Here we go. Everybody grab your favorite emotes, whether they're mine or somebody else's. Let's go show Miss Panda some love. Give me just 1 second while I get this sorted.